Hi, I'm Emily Taylor, creator of Collage Quilter. I'm here today to provide the second video tutorial about making the Clementine collage quilt. So we're going to talk about the actual process and thinking like an artist when you're creating this project. So where you should be right now, you should have your fabric all ready with the steam on the back of it. And well, first of all, you will have downloaded the pattern from collagequilter.com. It's just it's on sale right now. It's gonna go back up to $15 soon, so right now it's $12. Anyway, in the pattern comes this template, and I've taped this together, and then you can see that I've traced it out using this template traced it on a thin white piece of cotton fabric. You can use muslin or cotton, it doesn't matter. Just any lightweight piece of fabric is great. So then we're ready to just dig in, and the only things we need are maybe some good tunes, a good book, and your fabric and scissors, and the foundation fabric. So I'm going to start kind of where I started with mine. I jumped right into the green part, and then I actually went back and lifted up the edges of the green to add in the background. But if you want to be smarter than me, go ahead and do the background first. Now the background is just an assortment of really light neutral fabrics, okay? And I'll give you some close-ups of this one at the end of the video as well. But I'm going to, because we've got a lot of area to cover with the background and there's no detail, I'm going to make my pieces, I'm going to go with a little bit larger pieces than I normally would. So they are just really very random cuts. The only thing that I kind of pay attention to really is any frayed edges. So there's one piece, I'm going to score the back. So I score it by just scratching that paper piece, and then the background paper peels off really easily, and it exposes the sticky part of the light steam too that I have on the back of each piece of fabric. And then I'm just going to kind of start, I've kind of already started up here, so let's just continue. I will just start laying it down. And this will get real boring, so I'm not going to make you watch me do this for very long, but I want you to get a taste for what I'm doing. Again, scoring it, peeling off the fabric. And then in some of these areas where I have already put the green down, here's the trick. Because it's just temporarily adhered with the light steam 2, I can really easily just stick a pin under there and lay down my fabric and then overlap the green on top. So that's how we're just going to continue in that way until your background is done. I'm going to move on to a little bit of the green. I'm going to talk about doing the green. I'm going to talk about doing the clementine and the pot today. So the reason you see the design in shades of gray is to remind you that we're going to think like an artist. So we're picking a light source that's up above the pot, which means it's going to receive, we're going to use the lighter pieces of green up there, and then the deeper, darker pieces of green right at the bottom. So it's a little bit like a ball. It is a ball. It's a topiary. And that's how it would look if the light source were up here. So light up here, dark down here. And when I'm talking light and dark, I want to show you kind of the contrast. So you can see how much lighter this is than the real dark that I use. And then in the midsection of the quilt design, I've just selected, these are kind of my midtones. So those are my midtones. These are my darks, and these are my lights. Now, certainly, when we look at something organic, it has a lot of depth in it because, yeah, sometimes up top there are some shadows and whatnot. So don't be afraid. There's no right or wrong. Just know that you're going to kind of use more of the light greens up here and then fade into the darker greens. Again, let me just demonstrate how I cut and about the size that I have cut. So with this project, again, as with most of my projects start with a triangle that's slightly rounded, because that's a pretty easy leaf shape, and most of the pieces on the fabric are about that size. And I'm just going to kind of make the pieces fit. The idea is I'm just going to make them fit and overlap all the pieces of the project. So everything should be overlapping by about 1/4 of an inch. And again, we've got a lot of green area to cover, so don't be afraid to make your pieces a little bit bigger. And that's how I'll just keep working on the green. And then in the mid-tone areas, I'll use just a little bit lighter colors. And I'm slicing off kind of the hard edges. So I might have a very random piece, but it's rounded and it's a little more organic looking if it has some round edges rather than hard rectangular edges. Okay. So that's how I'm going to work on this, and it comes together really pretty fast, but just know that I think I probably invested maybe about 10 hours in the project. So you'll want to have a space where you can just leave it up, because you're probably not going to get it done all in one sitting. Get a good book or a good podcast, and then just enjoy this creative time, because it really is a fun experience. Now I'm going to do one of the tangerines for you. Now the tangerines or the clementines, again, think like an artist. Now a lot of them I've indicated 3 tones, 3 values on each clementine. And I didn't necessarily trace that out on all of them. You can see that I did it right here. So we'll just work on that one right there. I'm going to start with my darker fabric. And also, let me show you what my fabrics are. So this is real dark when I want to have a real dark shadow, but this is a very deep, rich orange color. These are the mid-tones that I've used, and then the highlights are actually a yellow and a really light orange. So those are pretty much the colors that I've used. I've used a little bit of that too. I have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total in the orange colors. And I just kind of mix it up so that there's a good variety of orange on each clementine. Now with the orange, with the clementines, the way I cut each piece was I did every single piece had to have some round on it. And then if it was triangular, I would round out that triangle like this. And that's just kind of how I work. I just kind of build the clementine with little slivers of orange. Now remember that variety is the key in a collage quilt. It really will make it more interesting and give it a lot more depth. You'll see I actually have 2 pairs of scissors here. I have fabric scissors that I don't want to use my fabric scissors when I'm cutting steam a seam, but sometimes it just works better to get it trimmed up good, because I'm just eliminating all the frayed edges. Now you'll see how nice that is, that I can reposition things. And that's the thing that I really love about the light Steam-A-Seam 2. I can reposition it if I'm not happy with the placement of something. These little clementines are fun to make, and they're very easy. They come together really quick. But I don't want to bore the heck out of you, so you can see that's where I'm heading with that one. You can already see that it's starting to take shape as I've just laid down kind of a highlight area and then the shadow area there. And I'll just continue to kind of overlap and lay down. There will probably be 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 more pieces. So in my clementines, there are about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, roughly 10 little pieces of fabric. The smaller pieces, you saw how the size that I'm using allows me to add a greater variety. Now let's talk about the pot real quick. The pot is interesting because I knew, let me pull this up so you can see it really good. Okay, so this is to mimic one of those oriental pots that's really popular right now. Any home decor store that you're looking at right now is going to carry these this chinoiserie pots. But I knew that my eye would complete the details. There's no rhyme or reason to the pattern, but what you do see in it is the shading, and I was true to the shading of the pot to make it look realistic. So again, highlights would be up here, and then it would have some darker shadows right down here. And so all I needed to make this effective was to pick out the blue and white fabric that I was going to use, and then make sure that I had some dark gray and even dark blue that would finish off that dark shadow. And there's only just a real small amount of it. There's not very much. But the other kind of trick that I employed with this was I did cut my pieces really pretty decoratively, pretty ski-wampus, and the fabric that I selected had a lot of be nearly effective if I didn't have a piece of fabric that had the high contrast that is kind of demonstrated or illustrated in this type of pot. So you're going to need to find some fabric that is a strong blue and white, like any of these. And then I added my lighter blues, and then the mid-tone blues, and then the really dark darks, and even darker than that. So that's kind of what I used. Oh, and whites. So I used a good strong white in there. This has a little bit of a white and gray theme on it. But anyway, let me just show you. So my cuts on this were, I wanted to use as much of the kind of organic pattern that's in this. So on the main section of the pot, my pieces didn't get any larger than this. And I just began by sticking them in here. And then as I moved toward the bottom of the pot, here go these scissors again. They're not the best scissors, only because I don't want to be cutting the Steam-A-Seam paper with them with my nice scissors. Now, the smaller the pieces in this.
Do you want to pull it up a little bit?
Yeah, I'll pull it up. There, can you see that? Okay. So the smaller the pieces, the more realistic it's going to look, because you're going to vary your white and blue. If my pieces are this large, it's going to be a little, it's going to read a little less like the type of pot that I want. So I think that piece is too big. I'm going to cut that again. And where did my white go? So I'm going to use pieces that are just a hair smaller. So we want, and then next to every piece of blue that I use, I'm going to use some white. Okay, so I just cut that up. It's kind of nice too to keep the blue on the outside of the pot, because the background is kind of that white creamy, and we want to make sure that there's enough definition between the pot and the background. And one thing that I did that was kind of nice, kind of fun, is that I made these pieces a little more skiwampus so that I could abut a white piece up next to that, and it would just look more of a, kind of have more of a pattern like this. So you can really kind of have fun with your cuts with this pot. And then as I move towards the top, I'm going to use more white and more light blue. As I move towards the bottom of the pot, I'm actually going to almost trace it with the dark gray, dark blue. So that piece kind of looks like, it's kind of like a brush stroke of the dark. The other thing that I have sitting right here by me is my gray flannel board and this trusty little tiny iron. Because as I'm moving along and I want to, if I want to pull this up here, you can see how it will flip these pieces up unless they've been secured. So as I move it around, if I'm happy with an area, I'm going to go ahead and this just will kind of temporarily adhere the pieces. I mean, not temporarily, it'll adhere them, but it'll stick them to my foundation fabric so that when I carry it over to my steamy iron, nothing's going to fall off. In the past, when I wasn't using this, sometimes I would take my project over to the steamy iron and I would lose a few pieces because they are only temporarily stuck until I iron them on there. So this is how I kind of work. If you have, oh, one other thing too, let me also show you. So in each section of the quilt, it's whether it's the pot or the topiary or even the stem, you're going to think like an artist. You're going to think, where should the shadows go? Well, the shadows should be up high, as if they're underneath these stems. So you can see that's where I've selected the darker fabrics, and then they get a little bit lighter down here. Also, if there's a light source coming from up here, I can make a shadow right here and it would hit it in the back here. So just make sure that you're using contrast so that you've got a light contrast against what should be the shadow here. And then you'll also see one other little thing that I debated about, and then I thought, yeah, I'm going to do it. I created a little drop shadow underneath the pot and underneath this little clementine, because I wanted to kind of, I don't know, I was just having fun with realism and wanted to see how it would look, and I think it looks really cute. So it becomes a little bit of a still life because we've got some shadow and some realistic shading in the project. So while this looks complex, it's actually very, very simple. You're going to have a really fun time with this, and if you have any questions, you can always ask them in the Collage Quilt-Along with Emily Facebook group. You can email me any questions that you have, emily@collagequilter.com. And don't forget that you can get the pattern and my new book that's out at collagequilter.com. So thanks for joining along. Just let me know if you have any questions. Good luck with your project. Take care. Bye.